Hi, welcome to our YouTube channel. Today, we're going to look at 10 of the biggest explosions ever recorded. For this list, we're going to look at the biggest explosions in human history based on their size and power. Atomic bombs will be left out for the most part, but not entirely, because we want to keep things interesting. What do you think about these things that changed history? Tell us in the comments section below. But before we start our countdown, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon as well. So let's get started. 10. The Evangelos Florakis Naval Base Explosion, 2011. On July 11, 2011, early in the morning, an explosion tore through the Evangelos Florakis Naval Base on the island of Cyprus. A lot of dangerous military materials, like gunpowder and artillery shells, were stored in the wrong way at the base. Several containers blew up, which started a small fire that led to the bigger explosion. The explosion, which was the same as 481 tons of TNT, tore through the base, killed 13 people, hurt 62, and destroyed the nearby Vasilikos power station. Half of Cyprus lost power, and people up to 30 miles away could hear the explosion. It also caused damage worth more than $3 billion, which hurt the already weak economy of the island even more. 9. The N-1 launch explosion, 1969. During the time when there was competition in space, the Soviet Union produced a rocket called the N-1 quite swiftly. There was a total of 4 attempts made to launch the rocket, but none of them were successful. There were a lot of issues, such as insufficient funds and rushing through the construction of it. The second launch, which took place on July 3, 1969, was a total failure for no discernible reason. The rocket leaned to the side, at an angle of 45 degrees, and crashed back to the ground shortly after it had lifted off. The rocket fuel that was on board was responsible for the massive explosion that occurred, which destroyed windows all across the complex and threw debris as far as 6 miles distant. The power of 650 tons of TNT completely destroyed the launch complex and turned it into a flaming crater. Because the rocket was empty when it exploded, fortunately, no one was gravely wounded. 8. The SS Grand Camp Explosion, 1947. A city known as Texas City can be found in close proximity to Galveston Bay. An incident involving a ship, known as the SS Grand Camp, that resulted in a significant explosion occurred in Texas City, which is a port serving the industrial sector. On the morning of April 16, 1947, a fire broke out within the SS Grand Camp and quickly spread across the building. The ammonium nitrate storage on the ship came under attack from the blaze. The explosion caused by the ship was equivalent to 790 tons of TNT, and it sent shrapnel hurtling through the air at speeds greater than the speed of sound. Everything within a 2,000-foot radius of the epicenter was leveled, including thousands of surrounding buildings, aircraft, and other objects in the air. The explosion was responsible for the deaths of more than 560 individuals. The neighboring Monsanto Chemical Company, which was completely wiped out in the tragedy, was responsible for 145 of the fatalities. 7. The 2020 Beirut Explosion, 2020. Ammonium nitrate is very dangerous, and 73 years after the Texas City disaster, the same thing happened again. Large amounts of the substance were stored wrong at the port of Beirut in Lebanon, and on the evening of August 4, 2020, they exploded with the force of 800 tons of TNT. Many cameras caught this explosion on film, and it quickly went viral on social media. It made a hole 140 feet deep and caused $15 billion worth of damage in Beirut. The explosion was a seismological event that people in different parts of Europe could feel. It could even be heard 150 miles away on the Greek island of Cyprus. 6. The DuPont plant explosion, 1911. In the early 20th century, the Wisconsin village of Pleasant Prairie was home to an accident-prone DuPont chemical factory. The worst happened on March 9, 1911, when 1.1 kilotons of TNT exploded and tore through the factory. It left a 100-foot deep crater, destroyed most of the village, and was felt over 130 miles away. The explosion was so loud and powerful that the police in Chicago thought their city had been bombed. The explosion was traced back to the DuPont factory, which had over 100,000 kegs of blasting powder and 300 tons of dynamite. 5. The Apo explosion, 1921. If you only remember one thing from this list, it should be that ammonium nitrate needs to be kept in the right way. In the German town of Apo in 1921, a mixture of nitrate and sulfate was being kept. On September 21 in the morning, this mixture blew up with the power of 1.5 kilotons of TNT. It left a crater 3/4 of a mile wide, and people in Munich, which is more than 200 miles away, could hear it. The explosion destroyed most of the town and broke windows in nearby towns. Worms Cathedral, which was built in the 1100s, is about 10 miles north of Apo. The church had real glass windows from the Middle Ages, but all of them were blown out in the explosion. 4. The Port Chicago disaster, 1944. On the night of July 17, 1944, military workers were loading weapons onto the SSE-A Bryan, which was headed for the Pacific Theater. This led to what is now called the Port Chicago disaster, which was a bad thing. The bombs went off with the force of almost 2 kilotons of TNT, sending pieces of debris miles into the sky. Ships nearby were torn apart like pieces of paper and thrown into the water, and most of the area around them was completely wiped out. The explosion had a magnitude of 3.4 on the Richter scale and caused about $145 million worth of damage. There were civilians among the 320 people who died in the explosion. This was the most civilian deaths on American land during World War II. 3. The Raffald explosion, 1944. The Raffald disaster is still the biggest explosion that has ever happened in Britain. In the late morning of November 27, 1944, 2 kilotons of TNT's worth of bombs blew up in an underground storage area. The depot was in the middle of nowhere, so there wasn't much damage or death. Still, the explosion destroyed all of the nearby farms and broke a water storage tank, which led to a lot of flooding in the area. A mushroom cloud went miles into the sky, and people in the area could see it. The 12-acre-wide crater that was made can still be seen in the village of Hanbury. 2. The Halifax explosion, 1917. Nova Scotia is a small province in Canada. It is the site of the biggest explosion that was not caused by a nuclear weapon. On the morning of December 6, 1917, it happened, when the cargo ship SS Mont Blanc ran into the SS Imo. A fire started on the Mont Blanc. This fire started the weapons on board, which caused a historic explosion. It hit with the power of 3 kilotons of TNT and destroyed everything around it. At least 1,782 people died, and many lost their sight because the flash was so bright. The explosion sent smoke 2 miles into the air, and a 60-foot tsunami brought the SS Imo to shore. Simply put, it was unlike anything people had ever seen or done before. 1. Tsar Bomba, 1961. Even though we said we would mostly stay away from atomic bombs, the Soviet hydrogen bomb accident was just too big to ignore. Officially called AN-602, the Tsar Bomba exploded with the force of 50 megatons of TNT, making it the most powerful explosion ever recorded in human history. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, called Little Boy, only had 15 kilotons of force. This means that the Tsar Bomba is 3,000 times stronger than the atom bomb that blew up a whole city. The resulting fireball was 5 miles wide, and the mushroom cloud went 42 miles into the mesosphere. The blast wave went 3 times around the Earth, and the flare could be seen from over 600 miles away. So yes, there was a big blast. So these are the top 10 biggest explosions caught on camera. We hope you found our video interesting. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with others. Also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new uploads. In the end, thanks for watching, and see you next time.